Oh boy, this is going to be a bit of a controversial one today. A few people told me I probably shouldn't make this video, but I'm going to. I think it's important that I do, actually, because there's a good reason we're talking about this today. I think we need to have an open and honest discussion about what we do and do not allow in old school RuneScape. I think this is important for the future of the game, for the future of the community, and the growth of the game. Without further ado, today we're going to be talking about cheat clients in old school RuneScape. It's not that, controversial in and of itself, but the next thing I'm about to say is, I think that some cheat client features should be integrated into the main game. There, I said it. But before you crucify me, okay, hear me out. I'm going to explain exactly what I mean by that. But first, we really have some groundwork to lay. And side note, Jagex, I know you're watching this, okay? Keep watching, please. I beg you. Now, I might repeat this a few times throughout the video, but that's because it's worth repeating. This is a very complicated subject for reasons that you might not initially expect. This topic has 50 different shades of gray. But I do want to make one thing explicitly clear before we start. I do not endorse using any third-party clients or illegal plugins or anything of that nature. It is against Jagex TOS. It can get you permanently banned, or even worse, hacked. Or maybe being banned is worse. It depends. Whatever. Also, as a side note, I'm not going to name any of these clients, nor am I going to tell you how to access them. And I humbly request that you refrain from doing so in the comments down below as well. Real quick, I'd like to thank the sponsor of this video, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of different classes on almost every topic imaginable. And when I teamed up with them, I immediately started thinking of all the different classes I could look at. Not only did they have my personal interests like coffee and espresso, but they had so many great classes for content creators like myself. If you've ever considered making YouTube videos or streaming or anything like that, then Skillshare can definitely help you with that. After a lot of deliberation, I decided the very first class I was going to take would be on Photoshop. Now, as a streamer, this is fantastic for making emotes and sub badges and graphics, and as a YouTuber, it's perfect for making thumbnails. It's really an invaluable tool. In fact, I've made almost all of my thumbnails in Photoshop, so learning more about this program is going to be huge for upping my game. If you yourself happen to be interested in this subject, I highly recommend the Essentials Training Course by Daniel Scott. I'm currently an hour in and I've already learned an insane amount. Past that, it doesn't just have to be about professional development. One of the things that I find most relaxing is just popping up a class on something I have an interest in and, no pressure of taking a test or having to memorize it, just learning for the sake of learning. And I find that keeping my mind active like that has been a huge boon to my mental health. So I seriously recommend you guys check out Skillshare. The first 1,000 people to use the link in my description box or my code TastyLife will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Thank you again for sponsoring my video and allowing me to do what I love. Now, back to our regularly scheduled programming. Moving on. The very first thing that we need to do is define what a cheat client actually is, because like I was saying, it's not exactly so simple sometimes. Now, in my opinion, anything that makes an input for you that you otherwise would not make, so I'm talking about things like auto clickers, thieving bots, AHK, I know is a huge one in PvP right now. I consider that to be flat out botting. I don't consider that in the same realm as these cheat clients. And while some of these clients are used to run those scripts, all right, separate ball field. That is not what we're going to be talking about today. So what are we talking about? Well, cheat clients in the frame that we are going to be discussing them at their very core give you information that you otherwise would not have. So the most common among these things are like tick counters on bosses and certain enemies. Things like Venge status, AoE damage tile markers, like spec bar, etc, etc. And a lot of these, in my opinion, are pretty much flat out cheating. Like, they're very much against the spirit of the game. I was talking to an individual while I was doing research for this video, and he told me about a plugin where for triple jads, it essentially turns your prayer book into Guitar Hero. Like, it tells you what to pray and when, and it comes down in this Guitar Hero style interface, which is like kind of hilarious to me. If you need that for triple jads, there's almost no way you can get to triple jads. Like, you're probably not good enough, but I digress. Like, that just super flat out cheating, obviously. However, there's an equally large number of plugins that kind of exist in that gray area. Some of these are, not on RuneLite, but I don't see why they couldn't be. They're just not. So the focus of the discussion today is going to be on those gray areas. And why are we talking about this now? Well, that's actually a pretty good question. Throughout the past couple months, Jagex has been kind of water dropping information on their initiative to make their own launcher, which as of writing this actually runs RuneLite, which is pretty cool. But more importantly, it would theoretically make you unable to launch other unapproved clients. Now, whether this will be the reality of it remains to be seen, but that is the idea. It would make it much easier to track people who are using illegal plugins or even botting, and hopefully drastically curb both of those things. And I am 100% for this. I think that would be awesome. It would be incredible if everyone was on just a completely even playing field and we had clear and concise rulings on what was okay. But we still do need to talk about a couple things first. Now, like I said earlier, I did do a bit of research for this video, and I actually had to pull quite a few strings. I had to talk to a couple people, get some favors called in, but eventually I was connected with one of the creators of one of the larger clients out there. This is the person that I was referencing earlier, and they asked to remain completely anonymous, which I will respect, so I'm not going to be naming them or the client that they make or anything like that. And once again, I ask you to refrain from speculating in the comments. Anyway, this person told me a lot about the plugins that they have made, that they can make, and I even got to sit down and chat with a couple people about their views on the morality of it all, and it was a very eye-opening conversation. It was genuinely very interesting. So let's dive in, shall we? Now, we're not going to be talking about most of the plugins because there are a slew of them. There are so many, it's actually kind of insane. Cheat clients can do pretty much anything under the sun these days, but there are a few major ones that we do need to discuss. The first thing we're going to be talking about is the one that I would say most high-end PVMers feel very strongly about, all right? And this is the magic disappearing NPC. If you browse Twitch for a long enough time, which, by the way, twitch.tv/TastyLife. Oh, yeah, we got to follow. Nice. If you browse Twitch for long enough, okay, you will eventually come across some turbo-cracked gamer in the Inferno with no webcam, no microphone, they're blasting techno, and they're not missing a single game tick. Magically, their NPCs disappear when they kill them. Cheat client. I know a lot of people's first reaction when they see something like this is to get upset that the person that they're watching is gaining some sort of unfair advantage using an illegal plugin. But I promise you that your anger is misplaced in this situation. For what it's worth, the person using that plugin could probably destroy you in any content on vanilla client with their hands tied behind their back. Like, we're not talking about those guys today. Those are the least of our worries. Instead, I use this as an opportunity to ask a question. Why are these people using that plugin? Well, the answer is actually interesting. It's not about making the death animation go away. That has very little to do with it. That's a niche, little improvement. It's slightly nice in some certain situations, but that's not the main purpose of the plugin. The main purpose of that plugin is to get rid of the click options on the dead NPCs. Which leads me to a follow-up question of my own. Why the fuck do we have click options on dead NPCs? Are you fucking kidding me? If any other game had this mechanic, there would be riots in the streets. I want you guys to imagine with me for a second that this never existed in old school RuneScape, okay? You kill whatever monster you've got, and even during its death animation, you can't right click it, you can't click on it, it's there, you can look at it, but it doesn't interfere with your clicks in any way. But one day, okay, Jagex messes up an update. And I know, all right, Jagex would never mess up an update. That's so far-fetched. But I want you guys to kind of bear with me here. Imagine they do. And suddenly when an NPC is now dying, okay, going through their death animation, you can right-click them, and they have options like that you can interact with but don't actually do anything. They're just completely null clicks. There would be a fucking rollback. Are you kidding me? The top page of Reddit would be memes for weeks about this. And I don't even want to think about what Twitter would do. It's probably not good for my mental health. We need to genuinely ask, what purpose does this serve to make the game more engaging, more complex, and more intuitive? In fact, the entire point of this video is to ask that question, right? We need to create the most engaging game that we possibly can. because that is the only way that we can grow as a community. I mean, we can spend as much money getting big content creators to play Group Iron Man as we want. We can add whatever skilling mini games that we want. We can do anything. But at the end of the day, if a new player picks up this game and it's weird and clunky and unintuitive, they're going to put it down. The game's not going to grow. If the game is not good, it won't grow. That's the point I'm trying to make. Anyway, that was a bit of a tangent. I apologize, but that is going to be a theme for this video, so get ready for a couple more. Back to the click options. I want you guys to take Inferno as an example. It's a spectacular piece of content, one of my favorites, and in my opinion, maybe the best designed content in the game. The engagement of the Inferno comes from identifying which tick each monster is on, so you can form this mental pattern, and you can step out and off-tick the blob and flick the major and the ranger, and you can safe spot the meleeer. That's so cool. That is so cerebral. That is so fun. Do you know what isn't any of those things? Doing all that to go barrage a pile of nibblers on a pillar, right? And you kill one of them, but guess what? You don't know which one. All right? It's still in its death animation, so the click option is still there, all right? And by the way, the death animation puts it at the top of the pile. So you can't just click on the pile again. You have to right-click the pile and guess which nibblers are still alive. You don't know. There is no way to tell. It's stupid. It is ridiculous. That is so insanely clunky. Even if you haven't done the Inferno, I bet a lot of you have done the Gauntlet. So go into the Gauntlet right now and kill a demi-boss. Watch how long the death animation takes and how long those click options are there, covering up your pile of items on the ground. It's like a soccer goalie. Like you can't get your fuck you. Fuck you. Sure, you can right click and pick up every item like that. Absolutely, no issue. Which, by the way, it's worth noting, between the time that the monster actually dies and the click options disappear, you can pick up every single item it drops. That's how long it takes. But once again, the question that I'm asking is why? Like, how does that add complexity to the game? How does that prove that I am a better player? How does it make it more rewarding for me? That was rhetorical. It clearly doesn't. Okay, all right, I've calmed down a little bit now. And I realize this might come across as a hot take, but I really think if you take an analytical look at this game from the perspective of game design itself, most people would be inclined to agree with me about this. But at the end of the day, this is just an opinion. If you disagree with me, that is 100% fine. You can tell me to kiss my own ass in the comments. But preferably with a little bit more candor, okay? I would prefer constructive feedback on this one, because I'm genuinely interested in fostering a dialogue about this. And also the other things we're going to talk about, which we'll move on to that. That was a lot. I know. That was probably the most long-winded section of the video, because I think it's one of the more important points. I do think, at the end of the day, that is how the game should be, even if it's considered cheating by current standards. If Jagex decides to never fix that, okay, fine. I'll play by the rules. But I will make my opinion known, and I want to make sure it's explicitly clear that I feel this way out of a genuine love for the game, for the mechanics, and a genuine desire for the community to grow. Now, next on the block. This is actually the thing that I asked about first when I was having my conversation with the individual, because this is probably the most famous cheat client plugin. It's what most people think of when they think of like a cheat client. And that, my friends, is the Sodaseg Maze plugin. For those who are unaware, Sodaseg is a boss in the Theater of Blood, and at certain points in the fight, they teleport your team to this maze. And only one person can see the maze, okay? So they have to run it properly so that everybody else on the other side who can't see the maze knows where to go. Now, essentially all this does is it shows everybody the pattern of the maze. So you don't need to wait for the person down below to run it correctly, and there's no risk of them doing it wrong. Now, I think this plugin is hilarious. Is it cheating? Absolutely, yeah, by a long shot. This is very clearly against the spirit of the game. But interestingly, it's not really that useful outside of the context of speedrunning. Which brings me to my second tangent of the video. But don't worry, we will get back to this. Many plugins were designed for and requested by speedrunners. And the person I was talking to shared that this is not because speedrunners want the game to be easier so that they can have a faster time. It's actually kind of the opposite in a way. They want the tools at their disposal to push this game and its engine to their absolute limits. It's not really about being unfair. Like, there's no moral hardline here. They don't really think about it like that. All they want to do at the end of the day is have fun, basically. It's not really much deeper than that. Now, the issue, in my opinion, is that when these plugins get made, they just get thrown into the client. And a newer player that has, through one means or another got their grubby little paws on one of these cheat clients now has access to this plugin. And very likely, they are going to use this as a crutch. They are not going to properly learn the mechanics and the encounter, and therefore their experience as a player, or especially a newer player, is going to be extremely hamstrung. Like, it's not really a fun way to play the game or to learn how the game works. Like, it's unfulfilling. It's just done for you. But once again, this is just how I personally feel about these plugins. I am no moral arbiter. Like, I do not have the privilege of deciding who can and cannot use X plugin, right? In fact, nobody does, and therein kind of lies the issue. Why would a good player be more entitled to use a plugin than a bad player? Well, inherently, they're not. It becomes an issue of personal freedom versus the effect on the larger player base. And like I said, I do not have the authority to tell you how you should feel about this, because it doesn't matter. It's arbitrary, right? I don't know. I don't fucking know. Where you draw the line is completely up to you. And now we are bordering very closely on a political discussion, so I'm going to pull it back to RuneScape. And more importantly, back to the Maze plugin, because I kind of lied to you guys. We're not really talking about the Maze plugin itself. What we are talking about is the greater piece of technology that allows this plugin to function. That is called Socket. You might have heard this term thrown around a little bit. Now, Socket in and of itself, I don't think is actually against the rules. I don't see why it would be, but using anything within Socket is against the rules. So what is Socket? It's basically like a party in World of Warcraft or in Call of Duty or something like that. Right, whoever joins that socket or that party, suddenly all of their clients can now share client-side information with each other. So your HP, your prayer, what special attacks you've used and if they've landed and how much damage they've done, how much special attack your character has, if you're venged or not, total damage, and like we were just discussing, the Sodaseg Maze. See, if everybody is on Socket, then the person down below in the maze area, that information is client-side. It is then sent through the socket to all the other players up above, and suddenly they can see the maze. That's how it works. Pretty simple. And, okay, before I go too much further, we definitely do need to have a conversation about what is and is not okay using this technology, but I think Socket should be in the game. Let me explain why, okay? In every other MMO, this is a standard feature. Not that RuneScape should be like every other MMO or should try to be like every other MMO, but there is a reason that other MMOs have this party system in place where they can share that kind of information. It's because this kind of thing expands the skill cap. Right? If we all had access to this type of information, like, who has landed, what special attacks, what the defense of the boss is at, that tells us, we can use this gear for more DPS. We can allocate responsibilities to different players more accurate. Like, it would be cool. It'd be really cool to have that kind of depth in an encounter and allow Jagex to make encounters based around us knowing that information for high-level PVM like that. It could really open up the floor to, having really specialized PVM encounters, and I think that would be very interesting. I can't really think of a single downside to having information like that. Worst case scenario, you don't like that hyper min-maxed kind of sweaty PVM. You don't have to do it. Great. It's worth mentioning that when it comes to PvP, everything I've said is completely out the window. This has to be balanced entirely separately for PvP, but I don't care about PvP, so you guys can, you do whatever you want. But for the main game, if anyone has any objections to this, I would love to hear. Genuinely, I'm sure there's some things I haven't thought of. So yeah, let me know. Those are really all of the main points that I wanted to touch on for this video. But I want to clarify again, I am in no way trying to paint these clients with a positive light. I think it would be better if they didn't exist. I really think that. There are so many issues with game integrity that we haven't even touched on in this video. And above all else, the worst thing in my opinion is that they are in no way regulated. Okay, most of these clients are made by Europeans in their basements. Most of them are relatively safe, but we have no way of knowing. Okay, people could put in unsavory plugins. They could get you hacked. They could get your account disabled. There is zero way of ensuring these things are safe. Which is why I think it's even more important that we talk about this now. Okay, we need to talk about the positives that we can take away from these clients. We need to integrate them into the Jagex launcher, and we need to yeet these unauthorized third-party clients into the stratosphere. Everybody wins. That is the best case scenario. Thank you again, guys, for watching. And once again, I really do encourage some good faith discussion down in the comments. A lot of this deserves to be talked about without being shrouded in misinformation and in taboo. But just remember, please, that not only am I a human being with thoughts and feelings, but so is every other name you read down in the comments. So keep that in mind and stay tasty.
Don't even think for a second, nigga, you might need a moment. You were only given one shot like a buzzer beater, but you stoned it. Brick house, brick house, brick house, brick house. 11 bricks at the studio, here's a brick on the house, here's a brick on the house. Yeah, you know they're coming quick, just like SWAT in the drug bust, but I'm slick, bitch, call me Rick.